What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with some Detroit Lions news. We have some updates for the Lions as we get prepared for this week 1 matchup against San Francisco. Plus, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Lions, one of the Lions' newest receivers, Hodge, who they claimed off of waivers. So let's get this started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we do have some Lions news as we get prepared for this week 1 kickoff against San Francisco. Man, I'm just more and more excited every time I talk about it. Plus, I want to dive into some of this Hodge because I really didn't go back and watch this film that much when we initially claimed him. I knew about him. I knew some stats. I knew some, numbers, some pro day size, things like that. But I really didn't dive back into the film until today. So I want to take a look at some Hodge. That way I just have a good feel on what he can bring to the table week 1. We know we are rocking with 7 receivers right now, and we don't get to see him in practice or preseason, but we can take a look at what he's done elsewhere and what he may bring to Detroit heading into week 1. Plus some injury updates, things like that. And there's some big injury updates. I may add that as well. And then throughout this week, I'm thinking tomorrow, we're probably going to start to dive into this San Francisco 49er film, get prepared for what they're going to throw at us, just like the Lions have been doing, prepare for what their weak spots are, where it's going to be really tough to attack them. Injury reports will start to roll out, things like that. So this is legit. We are officially into hashtag 49ers week. So can I get some hashtag 49ers week in the chat? Because it's that time. I want to start off with some of the latest Lions news before we get into the Hodge stuff. Okay, let's start there because these are some big updates. There's some big name players that we've been wondering about, and Dan Campbell gave us some insight today on some of those guys. Plus, we did get to hear from Trinity Benson and Hodge. They had some short pressers. There wasn't a ton of takeaways there, but just a few maybe little notes. But let's start off with these injury reports. Okay, first off, DeAndre Swift. That's the big name. We have not seen DeAndre Swift in the preseason. We didn't see him much towards the tail end of training camp either, dealing with a groin issue. So he was one of those guys the Lions were taking it very slow with. But we did start to hear good news in terms of getting back to practice, stacking days on top of each other. We started to hear some good news. He was looking good in practice apparently. And now Dan Campbell tells us that he should be good to go for week 1 against the San Francisco 49ers. So we expect to see DeAndre Swift on the field in week 1, which is fantastic. We have not seen this guy because, like I said, he did miss some time with the groin. So I haven't seen DeAndre Swift that much this offseason. So it'll be exciting to see this guy back on the field. Obviously, he's trying to build on a pretty strong rookie season, which was slightly limited. They started to kind of bring him in slowly. Year number 2, we're expecting big things out of Swift. We've seen Jamal Williams. Very limited. We saw him more at training camp, though. We got to see him there. He was taking kind of the top running back reps without Swift. We've gotten to see, luckily, some of these other guys, though, like the Jermar Jeffersons and the Godwins and even the Craig Reynolds, who is now on the practice squad. Even the coaches have said it, like Anthony Lynn. There's things that we can do with DeAndre Swift that we know will help us a lot on the field because Swift just brings that kind of it factor, honestly. Anthony Lynn said he's a first-round talent. Even though he went in round 2, he was a first-round talent. And we kind of knew that when we took him. We're like, dang, we just got this guy in the 2nd round. A lot of people looked at him as the best running back coming out of that class. It's just good news to hear that he should be playing on Sunday. And plus, this is coming out kind of early. That means they're not really in the, we're not sure not. This is only Tuesday. Wednesday, they're really going to start to dive into the game plan. So they're already they already have a good feeling about DeAndre Swift's availability for Sunday, which is fantastic. Michael Brockers is also expected to play week 1. Another guy that we really have not seen much of this offseason. We didn't see him in the preseason. We saw very limited Michael Brockers throughout training camp. We saw him much more early in training camp, and then it was kind of like we weren't seeing him, and it made it sound as if, okay, it's veteran rest, but then it started to sound like maybe Brockers is actually dealing with something. Brockers was, I guess, dealing with an undisclosed injury. So it started off like, oh, it's just vet rest, he's good to go, and then it was kind of like, wait a minute, he's actually might be dealing with something here. And in the words of Dan Campbell, he was improving at a snail's pace, though. It was taking a while to bring him on, and we've talked about it. The Lions have done this with a lot of guys so far throughout, training camp, preseason, is they want to get them right. They don't want them to just be, okay, you can play. They want to make sure you're 100%. They did the same thing with Levi. They held him out. They were like, okay, he could play right now, but we want to make sure that back is right. So you're going to see a therapist. When we put you out there, we know that there's much less chance that you re-injure something, that you're not 100% good to go. We want you ready and right for this season. So that's the approach they've taken, and that seems like the approach they're taking with Michael Brockers. However, Dan Campbell again believes here that he will be playing in week 1. He's expected to go for week 1. So that's big news. That's also good news. 2 guys that we have not seen a ton of that we know are going to serve big impact on this team. You're talking about a team that's going to really want to run the ball this season, so having Swift back is huge. I love our depth, but we know Swift is a difference maker. Honestly, outside from rushing the football, just being able to pass catch, the threat and option that he could be when you line him up wide, to have both those guys on the field, Jamal and Swift, that's going to be really nice to have. And then, of course, just take pressure off the other guy. Have a nice little mix there. And again, I love the depth. And then Michael Brockers, guy that we haven't seen a ton, but you can look back at the past and you know what Brockers is going to bring to the table. He is a fantastic run defender. And when you're facing a team like the Niners, who are going to want to run the football, right? This is going to be a battle of the trenches. Having a guy like this, who's familiar with this team, who's already been diving into the film, he was saying before the Colts game that he was taking a look at this Niners film because he knew he wasn't playing in that game anyway. So he's going to be on top of this. Having both these guys here is going to be huge. It's going to be huge towards this game. It really is. So good news there. The Lions have also taken advantage of the new rules that you're able to protect players on the practice squad. Now, this came into play last year in 2020. We saw the same thing, and it starts every Tuesday of each week. You can protect players on your practice squad. Basically, what that means is you got 16 players on the practice squad. You can protect 4 guys, and that means other teams can't go out and sign those players that you decide to protect for that week. And for the Detroit Lions, they've done it at a few positions where maybe they're a little bit lighter, or guys that just want to make sure no one takes. All right, so let's dive into who those 4 players are for this week. First off, quarterback Steven Montez, a guy that spent time with Washington football team, also coming out of Colorado, young player, UDFA back in 2020. And I actually liked what he did with Washington. I thought he played pretty well there, but they had good depth, so they decided to let him go. The Detroit Lions claimed him. They were awarded him through claims, and now they have kind of their third quarterback here with Montez. Because Tim Boyle is on IR, it's likely that he's going to miss about 6 to 8 weeks for the Detroit Lions. There's a good chance that we see Montez being protected multiple times to make sure that they keep those 3 quarterbacks. They want to keep 3 quarterbacks. Montez, maybe it's someone that they liked. Maybe they're liking what they're seeing and they want to make sure that he doesn't go anywhere. I know I liked what I saw with Washington. The poise, the confidence in the pocket, taking what the defense gives him, trying to do too much. And there was some nice accurate passes. There also was some inaccurate passes as well, some mobility there. Just reminds me of the type of player that would fit this scheme. So the Lions protect the quarterback, and until Tim Boyle comes back, it's a good chance we see this happen a lot. Also, defensive lineman Bruce Hector. Now, Bruce Hector was a stud. Bruce Hector was a stud through the preseason, and we brought him back to the practice squad. He has a case to say, I'm the best player on the practice squad. There's Craig Reynolds, too, so there's some other guys as well. But he played really well throughout the preseason, and with the Lions, Deshaun Hand on IR, Jayshon Cornell suspended for the first 3 weeks. Having him protected means that, of course, no one can take him, and he gives you that depth. Michael Brockers is expected to play this week, which is fantastic, but he does give you some depth. Well, he played. It would not shock me if when injuries come up throughout the league on the defensive line, if someone wanted to snag him off our practice squad. Would not shock me at all. So protecting him is fantastic. Plus, he's a name to look out for as someone that could be promoted to the active roster, because now with the new rules that started in 2020, 90 minutes before the game, you can take 2 players from your practice squad and make them active for game day for your 48 players. So you can do that with 2 players off your practice squad each week, 90 minutes before the game. I don't think we'll see that week 1, but it's potential down the road we could see that. And I know they don't want to lose this guy. It's just an opportunity to kind of hold an extra couple of players. And that's what they can do here with Hector that couldn't make the 53-man roster, because he honestly played well enough to be on a 53-man roster. We were just too deep. So the fact that we got him back, already kind of surprised there. Jalen Elliott. I love this. I saw Jalen Elliott's name. I was like, yes, Lions, great decision. We have CJ Moore. Yes, we have D. Marlowe. We got 4 safeties. But Elliott's another one of those guys that did impress me throughout preseason. Really did. I thought he had a battle between him and CJ Moore for that final safety spot. They went with Moore, but when they got Elliott back, protecting him, I think, is the right call here. He brings safety ability, of course, and I think he was playing pretty darn well, but he also gives you the special teams. So he gives you a little bit of that as well. He's another one of those guys where when injury shows up, Elliott could be picked up. He's young. Teams are going to like that. I like the fact we're protecting him. And finally, Zayn Gonzalez. Interesting one here. So we're protecting the kicker. So we do have Austin Seibert, who is on the active roster, but you also have Zayn Gonzalez, who's just competing. And the Lions apparently must like Zayn enough. They had him for a little while. He made his kicks during the preseason. No, his first one was a little rough, but they had him competing with Randy Bullock. They ended up bringing Zayn back to the practice squad to compete with Austin Seibert, who they claimed, and they put him on the 53-man roster. So they want that competition to continue. They protect Zayn Gonzalez. We'll see. There's a chance this season we see him out there kicking field goals during the year. There's no guarantee that Seibert wins that role just because he's on the 53 right now. So they could clearly want to see that competition continue to keep happening. Something fell through with Austin, and he isn't who you were hoping that he would be when you claimed him. At least you have Zayn on the practice squad. If someone goes out and takes Zayn, and all of a sudden Seibert struggles, now you're in a spot where it's like, oh shoot, we really don't have a kicker. We really don't have a kicker. Now you're just searching at that point. You don't want to get to that spot. So it's nice to at least have this spread. It's kind of like a backup plan to me. Now, when you look at the guys that they protected, of course, all of these guys got through waivers, or the guys that weren't vets, okay? So keep that in mind. But Nickel Roby-Coleman, they didn't protect Nickel Roby-Coleman, which is interesting. But he was available for a while, so maybe they're just confident they will get picked up. So they went to go lean and protect more of these young guys. And because Seibert's so new, it makes sense to have that comp. So they protect the kicker. So those are the 4 guys they have protected for this week. Every Tuesday you can do this, and these players cannot be claimed by other team off your practice squad. Also, while we're speaking of this game, the Lions no longer have the biggest spread for a week 1 game, okay? At least as far as I know, the Lions still sit at 7.5 point underdogs against the San Francisco 49ers. Really doesn't mean a lot, but 7.5 points was the largest for week 1. However, now Dallas and Tampa Bay is an 8-point spread after Zach Martin went down. So that spread has gone a little bit bigger for that Dallas game. If you're one of those people who makes picks against the spread, with the spread, they use the spread, all right, you're looking across the league, and maybe you need a little bit of help. Maybe you're trying to do some prop player bets. You know, maybe you're trying to do over-unders, and you're trying to decide, well, how many points are going to be scored in this game, and you want help on the Lions game, but also other games across the league, because maybe you're a Lions fan, but you're not as invested with the other teams, but you still like to bet a little bit. Well, I think you should check out BetQL, who is the sponsor of today's video. I got to give a shout out to BetQL. The link is in the description. You can use promo code DOD for 25% off, but I'm going to throw this little commercial in. You may have seen it yesterday, so I'm going to throw this in once again for BetQL. When did you start guessing on your bets? I've just been guessing. And who were your picks for week 1? Pats -3 over the Dolphins, and Bills over the Steelers -6.5. So I'm sure you're confused what the heck is going on here. Let's go back a little bit to kind of set the stage. Patriots and Dolphins. I kind of like the Patriots logo. I feel like that's underrated. Patriots all the way. Don't be this guy. Download BetQL to make smart bets. BetQL's best bet computer scans 350,000 unique bets per year to give you recommendations on all games, on all major sports. Take the Saints. Michael Thomas, he's going to carry that team. He's going to kill it. Trust me on this one.
Bro, Thomas ain't playing week 1.
Get up-to-date injury and lineup changes. That way things like this don't happen. I just put the money on them because of him. Solely because of him. Allegra, who should I take? Oh, it's Alexa. Alexa is not plugged in. It covers spreads, over-unders, prop player bets, and all the tools that you need to do your own research. Plus, you can see who the pros are backing. Keep up with real-time line movement with your bets. Background knowledge on team summaries, how they've done against the spread. You can look at scenarios, home, away, on grass. Head to try.betql.co/DoseOfDion to get started. Use promo code DOD for 25% off. I felt hopeless. So hopeless. Now download BetQL. Wait, down. We have a little bit more Lions news before we get into some of this Hodge film and start to talk about him a little bit. And this comes with the offensive line. Similar to the Tyrell Crosby situation, we've done this in the past. We know Dan Skipper was waived injured after the final preseason game as the Lions were making their cuts down to 53 players. But he was coming along. There was no guarantee he was going to make that initial 53-man cut, but I think the injury was really tough. And because of that injury, or at least partly because of that, the Detroit Lions decided to waive him injured, which meant that he was going to go through the waiver wire. However, no one claimed him. And we've seen that happen a lot with guys dealing with injuries. They don't get claimed. So because he didn't get claimed, but he was waived injured, he reverts to the Detroit Lions IR. So now he's back on injury reserve. Since he didn't make the initial 53-man roster cuts, now getting put back on IR means that he can't come back off of IR this season if you leave him there. So now he's back on the Lions injury reserve. And this is the same thing that happened with Tyrell Crosby. I believe he's still on the injury reserve right now. There's another option that the Lions have, and that is to come to an injury settlement with the player. And that's what the Lions have done. They've agreed on an injury settlement, which will, again, make him hit waivers once again. And if no one claims him, then he's going to become an unrestricted free agent where anybody has an opportunity to sign him. Now, he's still dealing with his injury. So the Detroit Lions, because they're on his injury settlement, they're going to pay him for how long that he's going to be out. I don't know how long that exactly is, but they'll pay him for that time that he's going to be out. He'll hit waivers again. However, if no one does claim him, the Detroit Lions could down the road potentially sign him and bring him back, whether that's to the practice squad or to the active roster. They could find a way to bring him back to the team instead of him just sitting on IR. So that's just an interesting little note. There's no guarantee that he'll be brought back. There is a chance that someone claims him the second time around, but it didn't happen the first time. So there's probably a good chance that he doesn't get picked up. However, the Lions, because this injury settlement, they're going to pay, for the time that he's expected to miss. When he is back and healthy, though, he'll be an unrestricted free agent. Teams are going to have a shot to sign him, and possibly down the road, the Lions could bring him back. The Lions do have Matt Nelson on the 53-man roster right now, and they do have Darren Paolo back on practice squad, and I believe Crosby is on IR still after not getting claimed, just like Dan Skipper. So just an interesting note, a name to keep an eye on. But now let's talk about this receiver a little bit that the Lions claimed from the Cleveland Browns, because we didn't talk about him a ton. We showed some clips. I said, oh, he's this big, he's this fast, he's athletic, that's cool. But what about what he could actually bring to the table? How can he actually affect this team this season? What can he actually do for us? What does he do well? And what does he not do well? Taking a look back at his previous film. Now, again, there's not a huge sample size here. A lot of this does come in the preseason. But last year with Cleveland, he had the 11 receptions. He had well over 100 yards receiving. So there was some film there to look at. This is another player that went to a small college, another undrafted free agent back in 2018. Prairie View A&M, 6'2", about 200-pound receiver that was pretty darn athletic. Unofficial scores of a 4.39 40. 38.5-inch vertical, which is just nuts. And again, 15 bench press reps here. Now, a little bit bigger than Trinity Benson, but same amount, 15 bench press reps, not bad. I wasn't able to find like the 10-yard split, things like that. I was very curious to see what that lined up as. And it was projected that his 40 time was going to be more of a 4.58. So 4.39, even though it was unofficial, definitely surprised some people. 38.5-inch vertical, those are both well above average for his position, and plus 15 bench press reps is the average for that spot. Take a look at his journey really quickly. So undrafted 2018, gets picked up by the LA Rams as an undrafted free agent. Went with some of the more vets, the Mike Thomas, the Pharaoh Coopers. So he didn't make the 53-man roster in 2018, but he did put together a pretty strong preseason. 8 receptions. Again, it was 4 games. 8 receptions for 100 total receiving yards. Rams put him on the practice squad, and he was activated during that season. He had 2 receptions that year. Nothing crazy, but he was brought to the active roster in 2018. That fast forwards us to 2019. In 2019, he put together a really strong preseason. And the second preseason week, he didn't have any stats, but week 1, week 3, week 4, again, it was still 4 preseason games at this time. The first preseason week, he had 3 receptions for 48 yards. The third week of preseason, 3 receptions for 54 yards. And he finished it off very strong in the final preseason week with 5 receptions for 76 yards on only 5 targets. Very strong preseason in 2019. Brad Holmes said, again, they liked the receivers. They had that 4-headed monster. So Brad Holmes and the Rams, they were trying to put him back on the practice squad, but that's when John Dorsey swooped in and he claimed him. John Dorsey picked him up because obviously they had cut him. He had to clear waivers, but he didn't clear waivers. The Browns picked him up, and that's when he lands with the Cleveland Browns for 2019. I don't see a huge role here with the Browns 2019, 4 receptions, nothing crazy. But then that brings us to 2020. There was no preseason or anything like that in 2020 that we can go look back at. However, he did play during the 2020 season for the Cleveland Browns, and this was his biggest year. This season, he had 11 receptions on 17 targets of Ben, so you're looking at. He had about 180 yards receiving. It was his best season. He didn't have any touchdowns, but it definitely was his best year. He had a 75.6 pass rating when targeted in that Cleveland Browns offense. And now here he is. He comes available. He doesn't make the 2021 team for the Cleveland Browns. They cut him, and the Detroit Lions claim him. They bring him to the roster. He's a guy that they're familiar with, and now here he is once again. And this is where I dove into the film, and I just kind of wanted to break it down, just get some takeaways. We don't have to do a whole film thing like we did for Trinity Benson, plus that one was requested, so I was like, oh yeah, we gotta do it. But I do want to talk about him a little bit because there are some takeaways, and one thing that stuck out to me the most, and I know this is like, really, that stuck out to you? It did, I know. It was his blocking, and I don't think I've ever saved this many clips from a receiver blocking. Now, of course, some of that had to do with the fact that there just wasn't a ton here. He didn't have a ton of playing time. 2020 was his most. He played 27% of the offensive snaps, but he does give you that special teams ability. That special teams was a way for him to get onto a roster and serve an impact. And, we've heard former players talk about it, that special teams is legit. If you're not a starter, you better be able to play special teams. And he's able to do that. Punt coverage, kick coverage. He can play on the return side. He can play in the coverage side. He can do both. And he's talking about, he's like, I work my tail off. I want to show up on that area of the field. That way, of course, you can make a roster. So he brings that special teams impact. He's done it in the past. And he's a pretty good tackler for a guy that's never played on the defensive side of the ball until he got to the NFL. Yeah, back in high school, he was a quarterback, so they didn't have him play in defense. And in college, he played receiver. He didn't play on both sides. So this is the first time he's played on defense. A lot of times, guys in high school, they play both sides. But he didn't do that because he was a quarterback, which also could mean that we could run some trick plays with him, too. I mean, that's just something to keep an eye on. You never know. I'm just saying, we got the Boyle injury. Blocking that really really stuck out to me, and you see it offensively, it's the way that they utilize him as well. Both the Rams, but really the Cleveland Browns. The Browns, they give me a lot of vibes on things that I think we could see this season. I mean, I think it's going to be a mix of a lot of different things, of course, but just kind of the stylistically, how much they like to run the ball. They like to set up play action off the run. You have Chubb, you have Kareem Hunt. They're a team that likes to run the football. They play to their strength, which is their offensive line and their running backs, and Baker Mayfield can set up off of that. But it was interesting to see how much they used Hodge, even when the receivers were healthy, just to put him out there to help him block. I mean, they would go one receiver set sometimes. They go under center I form. He'd be the only receiver out there. They would put him in motion. They bring him as a Z receiver. They put him in line with the offensive line. They let him block back there. They would pull him across the field. You would see him blocking second and third level. And even though he's not a fantastic blocker, he doesn't really move guys back. His connection wasn't always the best. What you do like, though, is the effort was always there. He's not the strongest guy, but he does have good size. 15 bench press reps is like Benson, but he does have good size. But it's just the willingness. And I see it. I mean, he is one of those guys that's sparking big plays. And I think that's important, especially in this offense. We talk about a zone rushing scheme. Receivers, it's important that they block. And even Dan Campbell brought up that St. Brown was one guy that stuck out to him. I thought Allison was doing some things there. Loved that. I know it sounds boring, but seriously, there's a lot of clips that I have, some blurry, some not blurry, of him blocking. Those are two of not the exciting ways, but two ways to find a way to get on the field. All right, that's two things they can bring to the table. And then you talk about the receiving ability. Now, to me, my closest comparison here would be a Tyrell Williams, because again, I'm trying to compare it to players that are on the Lions roster, because he does have some good size, 6'2", 200 pounds. He's pretty darn athletic. I mean, he's not like, Perriman athletic. He's not as shifty as Trinity Benson is. He's got some top end speed. He's got the vertical. So that gives me some Tyrell vibes. Plus, they play him all over the field. That's why I go to Tyrell Williams, because Williams is one of those guys that with Anthony Lynn brought out of him that slot ability, which made him a matchup problem, because they started putting him in the slot, and he's got all this size. He's got some run after the catch that maybe you didn't know about, and now he's a problem lining up in the slot. But he can also play as the Z receiver, play in motion, and he can also line up as an X, bump and run, press coverage on the outside. So he gives me some of those vibes. And that's what I thought Perriman's role would be. Obviously, it didn't work out, but as another outside guy that can line up as an X, because we needed a guy that consistently could take on that press coverage, could play outside, and also we could utilize him a little bit on the inside. That's what they were doing with Perriman. And that's what I think this guy's role could be. Now, I think we're going to see a lot of snaps with Khalif Raymond, Trinity Benson lining up as the X, because they play with physicality and they know how to play against the press. They've done it in the past. I actually think you can make a case they're better against the press consistently than this guy is. But I get Williams vibes because I really like him at the Z spot. I like him offline coverage. That way he's not getting that bump and run press coverage. And I like him in the slot. He had a lot of plays from the slot, but even he said, I'll play wherever they need me. I can play everywhere at the receiver spot. So that is nice. You dive into the film and you watch him as a pass catcher running routes. There's good and there's bad. First off, as a pass catcher, I like how he finishes through the contact. He takes hits and he comes down with the football. We're talking about we need guys that will catch the ball. You want guys that you can trust that will catch the football when you lay it out there. And he absolutely, to the film that I watched, he earned my trust. And I watched a lot. All right, I watched 2018. I watched 2019 preseason. I watched the Browns last season. I dove into a lot of this. I've seen pretty much every catch that he's had over his NFL career. And the guy can catch the football. He has one drop technically through the 3 years. And even though it's not a lot of targets, so it's kind of tough to, gauge, he was catching the passes that were thrown his way and that hit his hands. He'll take a big hit. He'll play through the contact. I love that. He'll play through contact on the route. He'll play that physical brand of football. But also to go up, make a catch in the air, come down knowing you're going to take a smack over the middle of the field. He'll do that. He'll sacrifice his body for the catch. And he also is a pretty long, wide radius receiver where he's catching passes behind him, up above him. He's got a pretty nice target that you can throw to, which helps in zone coverage. But it's nice, especially from the slot, attacking the middle of the field. He'll get that size advantage over smaller defenders. And catching the balls in the rain, you're seeing him slide down to the turf, making grabs. The only drop that I really saw, if you want to call it a drop, is he let the ball get to his body. Behind him, he kind of let it get to his body. It was like a second and long, and they punched it out from behind. That's why you can't let it come to your body. But in fairness to him, a lot of times the balls are coming to his body. They're usually behind him. If he's led, he's catching it with his hands. But usually it's passes that are behind him where he's coming back like this. And if you think about it, if a pass is behind you trying to reach out and grab it, it's like this. That's not going to happen. He made some circus catches going back with the Rams in 2018. Some of those grabs were like highlight reel plays. Going to crack the roster, but there's reasons that he had the production that he did, because if you put it near him, he's going to give it a shot. Even the drop that he had on a Hail Mary just before the half, they threw it to about the 10. He almost came up with it. I was like, dude, he's going to make an effort on every pass you throw his way. So effort, no question there. Blocking and pass catching. He also does have some of that run after the catch ability. I compare this to Tyrell. I don't think he's making guys list like a Khalif Raymond or maybe a Benson or even a St. Brown will do. but there is that ability to get upfield. He's got some speed. Will break some tackles as well. I don't think he's super shifty. Definitely not shifty like a Khalif or Trinity was when I watched him, but he does have a little bit of run after the catch, which some of that long speed, drag routes, things like that, where they utilize him a ton, especially back with the Rams, because that's what they did in that scheme. That's one area that you can utilize him, and that's where Tyrell's going to get used, but now you have another guy that can do that too, and you need backups. You got to have guys that can do it as well. That way you can push Tyrell outside and push him inside, or flip it, however you want to do it. Also a first down machine. I know that sounds weird, but literally, he had 11 receptions last year, right, in 2020? He had 11 first downs. I think he can line up on both sides of the field because we've seen it. We know he can play slot, outside, Z, X receiver. He can play all of those things, but he breaks off of his right foot really well. He's much more explosive. He's much more shifty, breaking off his right foot, inside, outside. He's much better at doing that and getting separation off the release, getting space. You see it whether he's on the right side of the field or the left side, but usually you see it more from the right side of the field because he's able to come across the middle and break inside. When he's on the left side, he still has more success breaking off that right foot, whether that's attacking fade routes, things like that. Now, one thing that he brings to the table, no matter where you're lining him up on the field, just like Trinity Benson, is the ability to stop on a dime. Either side, either foot, he can stop on a dime. All right, so comeback routes, curl routes, no matter where you line them up, there's going to be success there. And I think that's huge for third downs. We've seen it a ton. A lot of comeback routes, deep route, and then they bring him back to the football. I did notice working off his right foot versus left foot. Working off the left foot, there was much less separation there. They would try to run drags, things like that, and you would see cornerbacks that get much more physical with him, and his routes would come out much slower. His initial break would come out slower, and he wouldn't get that separation off the line, off the snap, like you would, or out of those breaks, like you would when he was breaking off his right foot. You saw that. You saw cornerbacks there would kind of stick with him and run with him, and there was much less space to throw it. Now, like I said, he does play through the contact. You see him using that Karate Kid, wax on, wax off with his arms. That's what they teach the receivers, to play with the hand battles like that. Don't grab, wax on, wax off, swipe those hands off. And he does that. He'll play through the physicality, taking the hit or just playing through it on the route. But there's much less separation when he's breaking like that, and there's multiple examples of it. Sometimes he's looking for PI. Routes are less crisp, breaking off his left foot. I mean, they're a little bit more rounded, double moves, things like that. But it's not terrible. It's just not the same as it is breaking off his right foot. So that's just a note that I had, some of the limitations that you may see in his route running and what they ask him to do.
Here's an example of how the Browns would make this work. He's on the right side in this trips formation, but because they're doing this play action bootleg, they want him on that side of the field. So instead of lining him up on the left side of the field where Tyrell could be, they put him on the right side and allow him to break off his right foot here till he plants his right foot, and that gets him back to the outside using the hands with the wax on, wax off, and then he's able to go out there and make a play on the football instead of trying to have him create separation off his left foot where you see less. You can just see in the film by the play designs, about 80-90% of the routes that he runs are designed so he can break off that right foot, get separation, because he gets a lot more of that way, and it works. Here's a good one here. Look at him sacrifice his body for that first down.
It's a lot of good because he's athletic. He does show effort everywhere, blocking, special teams, and also catching the football. You throw it near him, he's going to try to make a play on that football. He's got that swagger, that little confidence about him. I don't know when the guitar thing started coming out. It used to be just drop the ball, and now you see the guitar. So I don't know what that is, but I rock with it. We got the little guitar here, so we might have to bring it out when he catches passes. His sideline awareness, when the ball's thrown to the sideline, getting 2 feet in bounds, making sure he catches it, but getting those 2 feet in bounds first, knowing where he is on the field. There's that awareness to get those feet in. He's a very aware player. He knows where he's at on the field. The fact that the Browns were utilizing like they would when they go one receiver to have him block, even though their guys were healthy, tells you what they thought of him and what they thought he could bring to the table. So it'll be cool to see. I mean, this is a chance for him to get a bigger role that he's really never had before and a chance to break into a lineup. And I think he can do it. I definitely think he can. I think there's a lot of things that he can bring to the table. And there's certain spots, specifically from the slot, especially on the right side, but either way, I mean, fade routes on the left side, slot attacking the middle. I mean, those are mismatch problems for him because he can do that and play through the contact, take the hits over the middle. He's not scared, and he's got a little run after the catch, and he is a little shifty. He can stop on a dime. Comeback routes are fantastic. There's a lot that you can do with him. Hodge, we're excited to see you this year. I just wanted to do this because I really haven't talked about him a ton. And tomorrow we're going to start getting to that Niners film and getting prepared for this week because, man, it's coming fast. It's coming real fast. And then Thursday, the NFL kicks off. Dallas, Tampa Bay. Let me know in the comments below. You know what? I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that for the next video. But again, shout out to today's sponsor of the video, BetQL. Man, we really appreciate you. The links are in the description. Use promo code DOD for 25% off. I'm telling you, it'll help. It really will. They give you a lot of information over there. Checked it out. I was like, wow, there's a lot of things that I never even looked at, like little details that you probably wouldn't find elsewhere. And they got simulations. They have their projections that you can roll with. So check it out. BetQL, link in the description. Thank you, Pride, for watching, and I'm out.